when you look in the mirror in the morning, what is your why? When you think about
What
the
is
impact that you are trying to make.
you have to have a purpose in life,
Mhm.
and you have to put that above almost everything else.
I used to tell people it's almost impossible to experience joy if you've had 2 nights without sleep. The idea of experiencing joy, which is like a sporadic fulfillment, it's almost impossible when you're fatigued like that.
I'm really intentional about nasal breathing,
Mhm.
keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Along with all of that, I also only eat once a day.
Don't ruin your joints. That's the number one rule. If you wanna lift when you're old, don't ruin your joints. So,
Yeah. Great brands have polarity. You either love it or you hate it. And we did that by design.
Alex Neist. Hello and welcome to episode number 52 of Chasing Energy. And I'm so super excited. This guest actually reached out to me and I was shocked and humbled and honored to have an opportunity to connect with him, Alex Neist. And he is the founder of Hostage Tape. During this interview, we will cover, I'm very proud of the fact that we covered mindset, nutrition, and training in addition to what Alex's company does for your health. So I felt like this was one of those interviews where the experience is really starting to pay off and we hit all those sort of round robin topics that I wanted to cover. And I hope you'll enjoy this one as much as I did. I learned a ton from it. Look forward to bringing it to you. Are you one of those people who find yourself going, man, I know I need to get better nutrition, but right now this is all I can do today is to grab this bar or to pack this snack? But what I want to encourage you to do is go to sproutspout.com and look at the Sprout Spout. This invention was something I jotted down on a napkin during COVID. And 3 years and 13 prototypes later, we won't talk about how much money it cost to bring this product to market, but it's here. And what it is in 30 seconds or less a day, you have superfoods on tap on any kitchen countertop. I'd love for you to have a look at the Sprout Spout. And most importantly, what I'd love to do is help wellness be more accessible to you. And that's what we do with this podcast. We bring you nutrition, training, and mindset insights because it takes all three of those to live a life worth living. So without further ado, here is Alex. So good to have you on Chasing Energy, man.
It's great to be here. I always love talking shop.
Okay, we are going to talk shop today, man. And we have actually a lot of hobbies that run over and overlap. And you're a little further along than me in a lot of ways, except for age. But
You might be
yeah,
surprised. Yeah, I'm 45.
okay. I think I've got like I was thinking I had you bested by like a year or two, but I'm using
Most
German.
people are like, when I say I'm 45, they're like, wow, I never would have guessed that. I would have guessed you're like, 30s.
I've heard so many podcasts where you're talking about you went through this at the age of 40 and things like that. So I knew there was some history there. But yeah, you're looking great for the part.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So we were just sharing this, but let's kick it off first by talking about we're both huge fans of James Nestor, right?
Yes.
And it was a huge inspiration for how you wanted to create change. Tell me exactly when you look in the mirror in the morning, what is your why? When you think about
What
the
is
impact that you are trying to make, when you think of Simon Sinek, I know you're big into mindset and manifestation and things like that. So I'm asking the question, what do you look at your mission in life in terms of what you're trying to accomplish with this?
I think you grow up and become older. You have to find your mission. You have to find your passion. I think too many young men
Yeah.
aren't taught that you have to find your mission, right? You have to have a purpose in life.
Mhm.
And you have to put that above almost everything else.
Yeah.
Like, to be a man, you have to embrace that. What's your mission? And I think for me, my mission is, well, it was football.
Yeah.
As you can see, I've got these jerseys on
Yeah.
the wall. My first love was football. So my mission for the first quarter
Yeah.
was to be the best quarterback, to be the best football player I could be.
Mhm.
And then now, as I've entered this next stage of my life, it's in many respects to keep playing the game.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by that. I love working. I'm a workaholic.
Yeah.
I sit at my desk and I work 7 days a week. I definitely work way more than the average person does, but I love it, especially when I'm doing what I'm choosing to do and I'm not working for somebody else. But I love playing the game of building something that actually serves this greater purpose. And both of the businesses that I've started, they do that. They actually solve a really core problem that meets a large amount of people and does it in a really interesting way. And it's very close to me,
Mhm.
right? So it's very close to my chest on I'm not just picking something that I think is going to make a lot of money. I'm choosing something that I've actually experienced, that I've went through myself. And
Mhm.
so I think that's my mission, man. My mission is I want to keep playing the game. I want to keep solving problems. I want to keep building things.
Mhm. Okay. So solving pain points is what I'm hearing in this. In this case, you're focusing on something that's close to your heart, which was sleep deprivation, snoring.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, that's related to it. But I think it was motivated by hitting rock bottom. For me, going through a divorce, a separation
Mhm.
with my wife, because I snored so bad, it pushed her into the other bedroom. I was burnt out. I was out of shape, wasn't sleeping well, wasn't taking care of myself. All that stuff adds into each other. The first step of it was, okay, I got to look at my sleep. And then I discovered James Nestor and then went down this rabbit hole.
That's so great, man. It's funny how those things creep into your life when you're open and aware to sort of absorb them. Things like James Nestor and people like Andrew Huberman, talking about sleep is the foundation for everything, man. Where you look at the things you want to accomplish in life. I used to tell people, as someone who's struggled with sleep deprivation, I used to tell people it's almost impossible to experience joy if you've had 2 nights without sleep.
Yeah.
So when you think about going 2 nights without sleep, the idea of experiencing joy, which is like a sporadic fulfillment, it's almost impossible when you're fatigued like that.
And I think we take it for granted too. Like,
Oh,
because we sleep a third of our lives. And we don't think much of the fact that maybe I'm not getting very good sleep. And oh, by the way, that's probably
mhm.
a huge reason why I'm not having a great day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that again, to your point, there's a lot of information coming out about what is it that's within our power to optimize that. Whether it's in your case, you're talking about mouth tape. One of the things you're hearing a lot now is like drinking right before bed. Huge mistake for a good night's rest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you a little bit. You stay in great shape, and you're clearly an you're ex arena football player,
Yep.
and you're the head of this health based company. So there's a little bit of accountability there, and you're also a dedicated father. I want to ask you a little bit about what does your typical week of training look like?
So my typical day, let's start with what the morning looks like. I'll usually get up around 5:30. And what's ironic about that is for most of my life, I was not a morning person.
Yeah.
I slept in,
Mhm.
hated getting up. Even into my 30s, I still couldn't get up early and I would stay up way too late. And so now it's ironic. I completely shifted. I'm the morning person of the family and I'm up way before everybody else. So I'll get up at 5:30 and then I do red light therapy thing that
So
like
yeah,
and I like to sit on the floor and I stretch and I take my shirt off and I try to have the red light on as much skin as I can. Sometimes I'll do it even like without bottoms on because I don't know who said it. I don't know if it was Ben Greenfield. Ben Greenfield
yeah,
might have said it, where if you put red light on your lower region,
yeah.
it's really good for that area, especially as we get older as men,
Hmm.
right? With our testosterone and everything.
Yeah,
So sometimes I'll do that, but I get a good amount of red light, maybe for 10 minutes or so. And I'm stretching too. I feel like the older that I get, the more I just really need to focus on. And I'm sitting at a computer, so much.
yeah,
I do have a standing desk. So sometimes I'll
hmm,
stand up, sometimes I'll sit down.
yeah,
So I try to stretch and try to stay limber. And then I'll do another thing. I was talking to my son about this today. I'm I like to look at what I do throughout the day outside of work as am I producing or am I consuming?
yeah,
And while I sit and I work on myself, rather than having the TV on and just playing a movie or something that I'm
hmm,
consuming, I actually like to watch documentaries where I'm consuming things that actually help me with production, right? So that's actually giving me information that at some point maybe I can use that knowledge or use it information. I'm learning something. I'm
Yeah.
filling my mind up with things I can learn by consuming that because I'm just sitting there and I'm doing some self work. I'll drop my son off at school and then I do the sauna at the gym and then I do the cold plunge.
Yeah.
3 days a week, I'll do a 3 to 5 mile run. And when I run, I always wear a nose strip that you see here on my face.
Mhm.
I'm really intentional about nasal breathing,
Mhm.
keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah.
The other days of the week, I'm going into the gym and I'm getting some sort of resistance training in. I feel like the older that I was a football player, right, my whole life. And so I've lived in the weight room, pushing iron, all that stuff. And I'm well past those days that I feel like I don't need to build muscle anymore, but I want to look good and feel good. So I'll go in and I'll just do a lot of different variations of pull ups, variations of just sort of machine things. I don't get on a bench anymore. I don't do Olympic lifts. I don't do cleans and squats,
Yeah.
none of that kind of stuff. But enough that I get a really good pump of just some of the core things around my body. And something that I learned when I was out actually talking to the Power Project guys was as I get older, my lower back has been getting sore and sore,
Yeah.
especially when I stand up
Mhm.
and I'm not sitting down. And they were teaching me a couple of things to
Yeah.
think about. One of them was to work on different rotational movements. So, like actually creating different rotational movements of the spine and not stay neutral.
Yeah.
I thought I'd never heard that before. So that's something I'm going to start to look at working on with my morning routine is now how can I work on non-spine neutral things
Mhm.
that can help so that my lower back doesn't maybe have any pain if I'm standing up for an hour and a half anymore.
Yeah.
Along with all of that, I also only eat once a day. I don't eat two, three
Mhm.
times a day.
Yeah.
And I'm taking a handful of different multivitamins in the morning and in the afternoon. So I'm very, very intentional about taking enough vitamin D, multivitamins, probiotics, resveratrol, all these different things that I know my body needs that I'm probably not getting in a lot of the foods we eat anyways. And especially if I'm eating once a day,
Mhm.
right? And then I just avoid sugar. I try to avoid eating sugar and an excessive amount of carbs. I think the older I get, I'm not as strict about carbs as I used to be
Yeah.
when I lost a bunch of weight. I'm just more intentional about I don't eat as much and I definitely try not to eat that much sugar.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much a week for me when it comes to training and
Mhm.
kind of what I eat.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. You actually knocked out like 3 questions that at once, which is great. I'm really shocked at how similar we are because I generally don't have someone who shares my morning routine, which, by the way, is 10 minutes of mobility in front of the red light panel.
Oh, nice.
And I do to
What's
your
crazy, if you try to explain it to people, most people don't get it and they think like that sounds stupid.
my suggestion for those people, because I had the CEO of the Mito Red Light on the podcast, and
Okay.
he did a great job pitching. But what I tell people is if you ever want to really test whether it's placebo or not, if you have an injury like on both shoulders, you do a tough shoulder workout,
Oh.
only put red light on one and then see how you feel the rest of the day.
I was gonna say, like, I'd always wondered. I mean, I've been doing it now for years,
Mhm.
but I've always felt like, how do I know if it's actually doing
Yeah.
anything? It's easy for me to do just because I can sit there and it's not a big lift to do. And I see too many people talking about it that I trust that I'm just gonna do it.
Mhm.
How do I test it to know
Yeah.
that it actually is doing something?
Need a controlled variable. That's the answer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But what I will say is what your friends were saying from the power project there is I do specific movements in front of the red light that are to activate my lower back. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I started doing about a 10-minute routine where it's a lot of mobility work. And man, my lower back, it's so weird not being in pain. After 10 years of being in lower back pain and not being in
So what kind of things are you doing then?
so I started with the McGill Big Three, right? Stuart McGill is considered the back whisperer, and he's been on all the Huberman, all those podcasts for years. He's
Yeah.
retired, but he is considered the world's authority on back injuries.
Okay.
All the athletes fly into Canada to go to his special spine center. He has the big three, and bird dogs is one of those, and side planks. But the idea there is get your glutes activated so that they're awake for the day and you're not using your lower back to balance everything. I started doing deficit push-ups in there as well, which had the yoga blocks where you actually go down like 8 inches lower.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
Man, I started doing those. I do 2 sets during my mobility work. I'll do like 5 minutes of mobility, then I'll do a set, and then I'll do another set. It is amazing how much stronger I am now. Like when I was in a boot camp class this morning. They're like, drop and give 20 every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'm so much strong, and that's just a body weight exercise, but that deficit, it's like benching your body weight, man. I mean, it's legitimate work, but the point is, I love that we share so much there. I built a cold plunge, and then I have a sauna in my backyard as well, so those are obviously things that aren't feasible for everyone, but I tell people, if you're hitting a sauna 3 days a week, after about 3 weeks, you're gonna notice your recovery time get better from those hard workouts. You're able to get up the next day, and I personally like the heat before bed. The cold, I prefer first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the cold, man. It's hard, but it's almost doing a cold plunge. Like Joe Rogan talks about this all the time, right? Where he talks about like getting into his cold plunge. It's almost not even the cold plunge itself that's the benefit. It's the fact that it's such a mind F that is
Mhm.
like he has to force his mind to go, no, you can do
Yeah.
this. You can overcome this and get in it. So it's almost
Yeah.
like a mental exercise of just overcoming this massive, oh my God, and continually going into this and doing it, which is just great for us. So,
I have a simple rule, no coffee until after I come out of there. So that removes the
ah,
decision of, are you gonna do this or are you not gonna do it? It just goes, well, I can't have coffee until I'm out of here.
reward. You
Yeah.
go, if I can do it, then I get my coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So great mobility, and then the other thing I was gonna give you kudos on was when you talk about your run.
Yeah.
I was an ultra runner. So I tell
Oh,
people,
nice.
yeah, if some of the best 100 milers I ever ran was I made a rule and I said, you can't open your mouth for the first 50 miles.
Yeah.
And it
Makes a huge
huge
difference, man.
difference because your body doesn't go into that fight or flight mode. Now, if you're in a race, do whatever you need to do. When I'm training and I go, this is a zone 2 run. This is not a zone 3 or zone 4. The rule is simple. Just don't open your mouth. And then you're going to keep your
Right.
heart rate in a place where it's calm and you recover so much quicker from those. Once you start breathing through your mouth, your brain gets into fight or flight and says, got to breathe, got to
Yep.
breathe, got to breathe. And those are,
It's amazing when you go and you watch people. So one of my favorite things to do in the summer is go to New York,
yeah.
go to Central Park. I love running Central Park, but then I'll sit and I like to watch people. Like there's this spot I'll sit off of the that Kennedy Lake or whatever. I forget what it's called. I like to sit there and just watch people and everybody.
Yeah.
And you just want to stop everybody or have a booth and a table and be like, everybody shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Right.
The problem
And
stems back to things like the Rocky montage because people think if I'm not gasping, this isn't a good workout. And I tell them,
yeah.
guess what? If you jog with your mouth shut and you just relax versus run as hard as you can, if you run 5 miles, it's the same number of calories. The distance, yeah,
Like people just think, well, I'm getting more air though.
yeah, you're going into fight or flight. You're gasping.
Yeah.
So I save those moments for my VO2 max workouts where that is
Yeah.
where you're going to go 4 minutes on, and I usually do it on a hill. And those are the ones where it's like, okay, if you're not mouth breathing by the end of this, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. So
Right.
great insight, by the way. And it's clear to me you're highly committed to your fitness routine there. Thank you for sharing that. And especially with your diet, man, I can't agree with you more. The sugar is just an inflammation, empty thing. And the last thing I'll say about that is the best sugar substitute I have ever used is one called allulose. And
Oh, that's like they
it's in
use that
Magic
with a lot of
Spoon.
stevia
Yeah,
type stuff, right? Yeah.
it's in Magic Spoon. If you're just
Yeah.
having a hard time getting off sugar, go to allulose. Peter Attia really endorses it because it actually has good side effects on your body. It actually prepares your body if you have any other source of glucose. So it's an amazing chemical and it's calorie free. And the best brand is the Splenda brand allulose.
I notice whenever it's funny, like once you've rid yourself of most of those processed foods and stuff,
Mhm.
and you're in that state, when you consume it, what I get is my fingers get tingly.
I was gonna say my teeth hurt. As soon as I bite into
Really?
something that's got sugar in it, I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like, as soon as if I take a bite of, like, a Ben& and Jerry's or someone hands me, like, "Oh, try this cake I made." Immediately, I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, this is so rich."
I I know what you're saying too. It almost feels like you're eating like acid or
Yeah.
something weird. And then my teeth start to hurt. I like candy. I do. It's one of my crutches. If my daughter brings home Sour Patch Kids, I can't help but have a couple because they're good.
Mhm.
But every time I eat them, my teeth hurt.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, my weakness is granola. That is definitely I'll take a big hit,
Granola.
like, granola that's kinda semi-sweetened. I'll jump in on that stuff.
There's a brand of granola. It's like the Big Bear granola or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And they have these
Naked
chunks.
Bear, Bear Naked, Bear
Yeah,
Naked,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The Naked Bear that's got the chunks of like
Yeah,
cashews
cashew butter,
and
yeah, and
oh
chocolate
my
chips,
gosh,
yeah,
that is so good, but there's so many calories
yeah.
in that thing.
It is new it's so, I try to save it for my running days. I'll go, "Okay, you
Yeah.
can have a few extra calories today," but yeah. We talked about the fact that you have turned more into a morning person, which I really respect and admire. There were 2 insights that I wanna give you kudos on. Number 1 is getting up earlier, and then the other is not when you're talking about being in the gym now, we actually share that as well, where we're not doing clean and jerks and power lifts, and Arthur Brooks, which is like one of my favorite authors who wrote Strength to Strength, he says, number one, if you look at all the historical philosophers, they make a rule of getting up like 2 hours before dawn because that is when your
Mhm.
thinking is the clearest. And the number two thing is people always ask him, like, how much do you work out? Da, da, da. He says, don't don't ruin your joints. That's the number one rule. If you want to lift when you're old, don't ruin your joints. So
Yeah.
you are a fan of Stoicism. And we
Yes.
share this. I'm a big fan of Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and things like that. So, what I want to know from you is a specific and recent example of where you leverage Stoicism in a decision.
Oh, a recent one. Man. Oh, you know what? This just happened to me. Okay. So, I was just out in, Sacramento for the power project. And to me, the core of stoicism is not reacting
Yeah.
to external variables. It's controlling your reactions and not having a reaction. It's being able to control myself and understand that nothing outside like has to affect me, has to bother me,
Mhm.
especially if I can't control it.
Yeah.
Like if somebody wants to act a certain way, like it is what it is.
Mhm.
I can't control how they act. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe something crazy happened that we don't know. And so you kind of have to empathize and go, maybe they're just going through something and it's not about me. So I went into the Delta Sky Lounge. We had a layover in
Yeah.
LA
Yeah.
to then come back to Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so I went into the Sky Lounge. When you're dealing with some of the airline workers, it's not an easy job. They're dealing with so many people that any business that you have to do customer support in is difficult. And it's taxing and it's wearing on you. And so when I went in, I have my Apple AirPod Maxes, but when you get off a plane, you can flip the mode where you can hear everything. Even though somebody might look at you and think, well, that guy can't hear me, but you can hear everything. So I walked up through and I held my phone out and you go under the little bar reader thing. And then it recognizes, yep, you're to go in. And so I did it and I was looking at the woman waiting because you can't always hear it beep. Sometimes they have to like, okay, you're good to go. Like they always do that. And I was waiting for her to give me the cue, like, all right, you're good to go. And she didn't look at me or give me a cue. So I went, am I good? And she and she snapped at me. And she goes, yeah, I've been talking to you this whole time. I told you just kind of realized like it's not worth my energy to respond because clearly she's in some sort of state where, again, maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe something happened with, maybe she's got a kid or a daughter that something's going on. Like, who knows what she's going through that is out of my control. And what I don't want to do is allow my energy to be sucked into that
Mm.
negative energy because I was having a great day and I just wasn't going to allow myself to go and, pulled my phone out, got some work done, had a little snack, and then 2 hours later, I left and I got on a plane. So I think that's a good example of stoicism of, again, not letting.
Yeah. Yeah. And tensions can be high in airports with layovers and
Yeah.
this thing
Like,
like
yeah, I
that.
mean, who knows? Like, maybe there's some dude that she got in an argument with, because you know how that is. Sometimes you go in and they're like, "I'm sorry, you can't come in because you don't have the right credentials or you're past your time limit," or whatever, rules they set. And
Mhm.
then people get angry and, you have an argument back and forth and you got to kick them out.
Okay.
So who knows?
So I'm going to throw you a softball on this one. You're a big fan of Chris Voss, Robert Cialdini, and Jordan Belfort. Very good list,
Yes.
by the way. Cialdini alone, who has done Persuasion and Persuasion and so many other great books.
Phenomenal
Yeah,
books.
phenomenal. I'd love to hear a tactic, whether it's Chris, Robert, or Jordan, that you leverage in your business on a regular basis.
Yeah. So I'll use Chris. So I think the Never Split the Difference book
Mhm.
was a life changing book
Yeah.
for me. And it's a book that I make all of my employees read. There's a tactic in the book that, well, there's a couple of tactics that are kind of sort of related. But whenever you're trying to have a difficult conversation, it can be with anybody. It could be with an employee, it could be with a vendor, it could be with your wife, it could be with your kid, whoever. At the end of the day, people want to feel heard. But you have to make people feel heard. One of the tactics he teaches is you're mirroring back. I forget what he calls it.
Mhm.
There's a specific, I think he calls it an emotional audit, whatever. Where basically, if somebody says,
Yeah. I'm
uh,
hearing you say is
right, exactly, you say, okay, so it sounds like
yeah.
you're having a tough time because this happened.
Is that correct? And you
Yeah, that's
ask
right.
them a question. Is
And
that correct?
so essentially, I'm empathizing.
Mhm.
I'm making that person feel heard so that they feel like, okay, he gets it. He understands where I'm coming from. That's a strategy that I use daily in every aspect of the business. And I'll say what's ironic about that. And Simon Sinek was talking about this. I saw a video where he was saying he's really good at this kind of stuff, right? He's good at this with most people, but he's terrible at it with the people closest to him.
Yeah.
So I would actually go on a limb here and I would say I'm great at it with my employees, talking to vendors, talking to everybody else. But sometimes to the people closest to me, to my wife, I probably don't do a very good job of
Yeah.
that at all,
It's actually very
which
hard to be
is
stoic with our family too, because they say something, it's almost like a nerve pain in your tooth. It goes bypasses all your
totally.
filter, and you're just like, "Oh." Yeah.
Yes.
I shared, something with my son from the Gottman Institute, which they do a bunch of research on what make marriages last, and one of the credentials for that is the sign of a good relationship is you give 4 to 5 good compliments before you give a constructive criticism.
I talk about that one a lot.
Yeah,
And
and I tell my son, on a regular basis, I was like, "If you can keep a tab, and if I start draining the tab, I gotta do the work." Because it's important to me that he's my oldest son, so constantly you're thinking like, "Buddy, come on, do this. Come on, come on, come on." Am I giving him enough affirmation? Am I giving him enough feedback? Or does every compliment come with a, "But here's what I need from you." Not the way to lead as a father, by the way.
right,
So so
I think is what they
yeah,
called it.
yeah, yeah. There's like, the 4 horsemen of, stonewalling and things like that, yeah. Im
There's like the four. There's a handful of things that happen in a relationship
That's right.
that are signals of like, okay, if these things are rearing their head,
Mhm.
then you need to address them.
That's right. As someone who's been through a divorce, there's signs you look at and I've been through one too, and
Yeah.
there's signs you look back and go, "This is a sign." You have
Oh
perspective.
yeah. I mean, once you've been through it,
Yeah,
you can do support sessions for other guys going through it and coach them through it because we've seen it all. We know
yeah.
exactly what's happening. We know exactly where they're going, when this is going to happen, how's it going to happen, and they're like, "What?"
The biggest thing I notice is that when I'm talking to somebody, like a guy that's a friend of mine, and he'll come out and say, "Hey, I think we're about to get a divorce," or a woman that I'm friends with will say, "Hey, we're thinking about getting divorced." I'll do what you were talking about, like with Chris Voss. Listen, I'm here for you. I want you to know this is a tough thing. The biggest misconception for people who have not been through a divorce and are going down that road is they think it's no big deal. They'll say things like, "Oh, it's gonna be fine. It's no big deal," and that's where I go, "You have
Right.
no idea what you're in for."
And they also say, "Oh, kids are resilient. They'll get through it."
Yeah. The tax from that.
That's an excuse people make to make themselves feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. You're exactly right, man. Great information. You're such a great resource for all these different topics of mine. So, easy question for you. What's the last book you read that caused you to change a way you think or conduct yourself?
I wouldn't say I've read it all, but I carry I'll pull it out because it's right here. I think it's right here. Yeah, here it is. So it's a book that I continually sort of read through it,
Yeah.
but it's Traction.
Oh, yeah. I've got it right here.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. I was
This is a book
I
that
was a process design engineer in my corporate life, so we practiced that.
so this is one of those books where I always take it with me
Mhm.
because I feel like there's so many things in this book that as I continue to scale this business, the amount of people who I've talked to who are like, you have to read Traction
Yeah.
because they can see the writing on the wall. They've been there and they're like, I know where you're going with your business. You
Mhm.
have to read that book. And so there's all these SOPs in this book that I'm like, yeah, okay. I got to put that in place.
For
It's
our
pretty
audience, when he says
proper.
SOP, he's talking
Yeah.
about standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say this I can't pinpoint any one thing from the book at the moment,
Mhm.
but when I read through the book and I continue to go back to it, there's just reminders of like, oh, yeah, I need to have this process in place because, like, an example is when you hire employees, most people make the mistake of you hire the employees and then at some point down the road, you're like, what the hell is wrong with these guys? Why aren't they doing their job very well? But then you realize, what are you doing to actually make sure they're set up to succeed and you're giving them everything that they need and not expect them to do everything you want, right? And you have to coach them. You have to give them what they need. That's a shift that I have to make, right? Is being a CEO of a company. I'm still the CEO and the COO, really. I'm operating in it, which at some point I shouldn't be. And I should be more focused on, yes, the vision, but also taking care of
Yeah.
my guys and making sure that they have what they need and they're getting enough support from me, but they're also getting the proper critique from me because they're learning. They're all learning from me.
Mhm.
So,
So what it gives you is the guideline between accountability and autonomy.
well, it gives me reminders of areas that I should be doing that maybe I didn't know,
Mhm.
because as you scale, when you go from $1 million a year business to a $50 million a year business, that's a pretty different business.
Yeah.
So,
Very impressive, man.
quite the scale.
So let's talk a little bit about the hostage tape. And I want to know first, when you think about what is the biggest differentiator between hostage tape and any of those tapes that we find on Amazon or something else that can be used?
Yeah. So, there's a couple things. One is, well, let's frame when you say the other ones you find on Amazon. Let's frame that
Yeah.
for a moment. So now, because I created this category, I basically made mouth tape what it is because of what we did
Mhm.
to it. So now you can go on Amazon and you can see, 50 copycats that are trying to do what I'm doing.
To
The
be
reality
fair, I
is
was
they're
talking
just
about the generic 3
yes. So now the difference is most of those they're they're actually just super cheap, rigid, maybe plasticky tape that maybe doesn't stick too well,
Mhm.
doesn't feel very comfortable, it falls off, and so then they try to sell it really cheap. Like, "Here, buy 100 pieces for $5." Like, well, you're gonna get what you pay for.
Mhm.
It's not really gonna work too well. And where we differentiated was the fact that it's this flexible fabric
Mhm.
tape that has just the right amount of adhesive that it's strong enough to work, but also not so strong that it's like duct tape and you're gonna rip your hair out. And it works really well with facial hair, right? But the fact that it's this stretchy material makes it so comfortable, whereas most regular tape, it's really rigid when you put it on. not very comfortable. And because it's rigid, it doesn't do well with uneven surfaces,
Mhm.
right? And so that's probably one of the biggest, I think, reasons why the tape has exploded so much is because when people use it, majority of people who use it, it works really, really well for them. And they immediately know. I used to use micropore tape for years and trying hostage tape, so much more comfortable, so much better. Right. And secondly, I would say the brand. Like when I launched the brand, I knew that I'm going to be selling a commodity. And how do you differentiate yourself? How do you create a moat? And you do that by building a brand that people love,
Mhm.
a brand that stands out, a brand that inspires men, that inspires people to buy your product, to want to be a part of the
Yeah.
company. You know, that's what Liquid Death and what Mike did with that,
Yeah.
right? Liquid Death is a phenomenal brand. It's water. It's great water. Don't get me wrong. It's a great product, but it's such a cool brand and I love being a part of the brand. And Dude Wipes is another one. I love what Sean did with Dude Wipes, man. You could easily buy wipes at Target half the price, but I'd much rather buy Dude Wipes because I love the brand. I love the playfulness of it. I know Sean, I know the founder, and I'm a brand like him. I'm a challenger brand.
Mhm.
People buy things usually because of emotion, right? Most people buy things with
Yeah.
emotion.
The Jordan Belfort now.
Yeah, and they'll validate it with
Yeah.
logic, right? You buy an emotion and you validate that with your logic. Like, oh man, I really want this. I love this. This is cool. This is going to make me feel cool. And then you go, okay, do I have enough money to buy this? Yes, I do. Okay, it's not too expensive, right? No, it's not too expensive. Okay, right. Okay. You know, and so that's what we knew with the brand was it's going to create this emotional connection with people, with men, inspire them, and people love it. Well, I mean, look, great brands have polarity. You either love it or you hate it. And we did that by design. There's a lot of people that hate the
Mhm.
brand, hate the branding, right? That's okay.
Yeah.
You know, you're just not for us.
The author Mark Manson has a phrase that he uses. I'm assuming you know who he is. He's written a lot of
Yeah.
bestsellers, but his argument is that if you want to be big, it's best to be a contrarian. The catch is you actually have to be right. You have to
Yes.
be able to take a stance, but in the end, you have to be right about it.
Well, you have to like it's so Moise. I talk about Moise Ali all the time with this. You have to you have to be able to stand out and be different,
Mhm.
like that contrarian mindset, right? Of like you walk down the aisles of Target, and if you see a wall of white in the deodorant aisle, then you go, "There's an opportunity
Yeah.
there." Rather than be afraid
Yeah.
of it, you go, "There's an opportunity because there's a big enough
Yeah.
market, and I just have to create something that stands out, gets people's
The purple
attention."
cow.
Yeah, totally, exactly.
Man, you have got the marketing advice down. This is great. So, with sleep tracking devices being the norm, like the Aura Ring and the Whoop strap and things like that, what insights would you offer people who are sleep trackers in terms of how long till you see any impact from using hostage tape?
Yeah, look, everybody's different. So for me, I felt it right away. So when I mouth taped for the first time, and that's why when I discovered mouth taping, I immediately knew I'm like, there's a business here. I have to build a business around this because this was life changing.
Mhm.
Like, holy crap! Like just the amount of energy I felt waking up. So everybody's different though, because there's some people who they'll mouth tape, they don't feel it right away, but then as they continue to do it day by day by day, within maybe 5 to 7 days, then they start to notice something different. And then some people, they'll post their Whoop or their Aura Ring stats on Instagram and say, "Oh my God, look at this." And whatever stats are there, I don't have those, but they'll show some stat that proves this was before and this was after.
Mhm.
Look how much better, sleep I'm getting because the Whoop says. So I would say that, man. Everybody's just a little bit different.
Yeah. So,
But if you're mouth breathing, though, if you're a mouth breather during sleep, you will 100% sleep better, feel better. by wearing mouth tape.
Then where can people find out more about what you're working on and what you're up to next?
Everybody can go to hostagetape.com
Mhm,
and also to our socials
mhm,
at hostage tape on any one of the channels you might be on.
mhm. Any big box retailers you wanna share that you're breaking into lately?
Yeah, so we are going to be launching into Sobeys up in Canada.
Mhm.
That's going to happen probably at the turn of the year here, probably about 400 doors.
Yeah,
And
that's big.
then we're working on Walmart right now.
Yeah.
So at some point next year, we'll be launching into hopefully Walmart
I
nationwide.
applaud you. Anything over that border, it's just there's so many rules
Yeah,
and
exactly. Well, that's what I love about it, right? Logistically, it's a
it's a
nightmare
nightmare.
shipping to
Yeah.
Canada. It's just awful. But also, it's
Mhm,
strategic in the sense that anytime you get into retail, it's a big risk. Because if you don't do it right, you could sink your
mhm,
business. So, starting small with 400 doors is a great starting point to learn, make sure we have everything in place to then roll out to go into Walmart. I'd rather do that than go into Walmart first and you realize we're not ready. We screwed up. We didn't have what we needed, you know?
mhm. Okay. That's a great little test then. I wanna thank you before we, disconnect, not only for what you're doing for people's sleep, but especially today, what you shared with, how you train, how you think, how you eat, and you inspired a lot of people. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I can tell, Alex.